All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for Thursday, May 12th, 2022. This is the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board. Welcome, everyone. To start with, we have our public invited to be heard, and I don't see anyone, but just double checking.
Don't have anybody, no.
So our next item on the agenda is approving the minutes from our April 14th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion.
Okay, in a second. From Deanna, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. All right, opposed? And abstentions? Okay, so that passes. Thank you all. And then Molly, I think this one is yours. The first application for the affordable housing and Cdbg funding.
So Molly O'Donnell, Housing and Community Investment Director. I wanted to introduce first a couple of our new staff members. So our Housing and Community Investment side of the office is finally filled. I'm very, very thrilled to announce that Deb Calise has started as our Housing Investment Manager. And then Kayleen Whaley has started as our Affordable Housing Specialist. We do have a couple other staff, but they're on tonight since they are involved in the Inclusionary Housing program that we're going to go over. We did fill, however, our Cdbg and grant funding program specialist. That will be Adam Sanderson. He started May 2nd, and that brings us to a full house finally. Oh, and Katie Pung, who is doing development for us on our ARPA affordable housing developments. So 40 people in 3 weeks. So we are getting onboarded right now.
Congratulations.
So thanks, and thank you to Deb and Kayleen for sure for joining us tonight and joining us in general. So I want to just give a heads up. Deb or Kayleen, if you want to mention anything, go right ahead. I saw you came off mute, Deb.
Just to say hello, and I'll be in person, I'm sure, at the next time. We're doing that school wrap-up stuff like everybody else was talking about.
Perfect. Kayleen, just pop off mute if you want to say anything, or else I'll just move right ahead. So this first item is just a heads up that we did open up the funding cycle for our Cdbg and affordable housing programs on Monday, May 9th. And we're accepting applications through Friday, May 27th, with the idea that we will come back here at the June meeting to have presentations and recommendations for awards. So we did some outreach. We sent it to some of our usual suspects, and I tried to expand our mailing list as much as I could. Anybody that I've heard of recently that might be interested. We just did a press release that should have been released this morning, I believe. I'm trying to draw in new organizations, maybe, if they're out there. So I just encourage you to spread the word and then be ready to hear some presentations at the June meeting. So I'm happy to have been able to do that. That was a tough one to pull off alone. So I'm really glad that we had the team come in to be able to get that going in as short of order as we could. So
Great.
That's all I have to report on that one. If there's any questions or otherwise.
Any questions or anything? All right. And then the next item is review and approval of the Section 3 policy.
Okay. So this is a policy that is required by HUD specifically for our Cdbg programs. We've always had a Section 3 plan in place, but they have revamped Section 3 pretty significantly as of 2021. And so this policy just updates our practices to be in line with the new requirements. It's a good size lift. The amount of reporting and the way that they're measuring progress on Section 3. So just the basic summary of Section 3 is that because HUD, their primary objective is to provide housing and economic opportunities to low-income households, that if they're funding projects, particularly infrastructure, but really funding things of a large dollar value, which is 200,000, they want to see those objectives met through that project too. So they want you to make a concerted effort to hire what's called a Section 3 business concern, which is usually a smaller firm that is owned by somebody that's a low-income household, and there's a couple of other criteria that could include, or hire employees that qualify as Section 3 employees. And so we're now supposed to track not just the hires, but we're supposed to track the number of hours worked on these projects. So the contractors were already confused by Section 3. So what we've done is we're developing right now a tracker and a template reporting form to try and make it as easy as possible. We don't often have Section 3 projects, but it's definitely possible, and we'll just have to follow this policy in those instances. So I did put this in draft form up on our city website because we opened the funding cycle, and this could be applicable to some of those projects. So if you approve this tonight, then I'll go ahead and finalize and put it on the website in that version.
Great. And a copy of that draft was included in the electronic packet that we received. Did anyone have any questions for Molly about this policy? Okay. If there aren't any questions, then I will entertain a motion to approve this policy. Anyone would like to? All right, Deanna, and then do we have a second? Okay, and so seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and we're done. That is approved. Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
All right, and then our next item is reporting out on the 2021 Inclusionary Housing Program metrics.
We have a PowerPoint that I will go ahead and pull it for us here. So Erica, continue to do notes. Okay. Okay, Molly O'Donnell again. So thanks first to Kayleen, who really helped put this together. This was her first big project when she joined us, April 18th, a couple of weeks ago. So
We can't see the presentation here.
oh, whoopsies. It's fine.
Go back to this. Yeah.
Hi.
I thought you were gonna be virtual.
Skipped a step there, so thanks for your patience and letting me know. There we go. Okay.
Perfect. I can see it now. I think.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
perfect. Thank you.
So again, thanks to Kayleen for putting this together as her very first big task with us. It was kind of a good thing to do to wrap up a whole year.
Just kind of I know, but I don't think we have a quorum.
Oh, because there's.
Usually 5 for a quorum. Are there 5 board members here?
Yes, we have 5. 2 in person, 3 on virtual.
You can't
Oh.
see them all on.
Oh, I can't see them all on virtual. Okay,
Not
sorry.
in the fishery.
I was like, wait, I don't see everybody. We don't have a quorum. Okay, but they're on virtual. Okay, that's fine. Sorry.
No problem. All right, so here is our year-end summary of the Inclusionary Housing Program for 2021. I have to do this way so I don't skip over. So just a summary of what I'm going to go over tonight, a recap of our affordable housing goal, a synopsis of the 2021 Longmont housing market, an overview of our investments coming out of housing and community investment, and impact on the Inclusionary Housing Program. So for affordable housing development, unit development, I should say, since the establishment of the program, we've achieved just over 45% of our goal. We need to create about 200 new affordable homes annually while maintaining and preserving all the existing affordable homes in order to meet this desired goal of, it's hard to see here for those in person since our, can I do that?
Yeah.
There we go. 5,400 units or 12% of our housing stock by 2035. So in this year, we built 24 units. So really since the inclusionary housing program started in 2018, we've kind of been inching towards the goal. But that was also some extreme market situations going on. And so we still, I mean, we have projects in the pipeline. These estimations for 22, 23, and 24 are based on projects working through the entitlement process. So for an overview of our investments, the city invests local and federal dollars into programs dedicated to advancing our affordable unit development goals. We show an increase from 2020 to 2021 due to the COVID pandemic. Due to the COVID pandemic, 2019's total investment was higher of the federal dollars coming from the city. That dropped in, well, it increased in 2020 because that's where we were going. And then within 2020, that changed. And we did reduce those investments just because we pivoted for COVID, giving money towards rental assistance and more direct assistance in that manner. But we are back on the upswing. And I will say that the leveraged amount, so the dark blue shown here, really is heavily variant. And that really depends on whether we have some larger developments going through that we're helping fund. So that can be one or two projects that really make that number really vary. So we did have in 2020, just had one project go through. So that's what that is. A synopsis of the Longmont housing market. So a single income households that are earning 50% AMI. This is $43,900 a year for the 2021 year. And that is equivalent to $22.86 per hour for full-time work. Folks in this bracket have not been able to afford the average rent in Longmont since 2012. And the gap has only grown. So note that the orange bars here indicate the incomes needed to afford that rent when you're considering a cushion that you're only supposed to be paying up to. HUD says 30% of your monthly income. Longmont for the inclusionary housing program is accepted 33% due to our market here. And so that means that the gray bar is the total income for a 50% area median income household, which means they're not, there is not even a cushion issue. They just can't flat out afford the average rent in Longmont with their monthly income. And of course, you can see from 2020 to 2021, that average rent increased significantly. We're over $1,700 a month now. Median home prices have continued to increase for both attached for sale product at a 5.5% increase over 2020 and detached homes at an 8.8% increase over 2020. 2012 is when a family at 80% of the area median income could no longer afford to purchase a detached home. And 2015 was when the 80% area median income could no longer afford the median attached home prices. So, and I don't know if any of this is too surprising with what has been going on in our market, but it is just widening the gap, clearly. So you can notice here in home sales that the number of new homes sold, so that's not constructed, that's contracted and sold in 2021 did slow down compared to the last several years. But it can be assumed that overall it's still up, and that's because we have an increase in existing homes for sale, and we can glean that the market conditions encourage those existing owners to sell. Impact on our inclusionary housing program. So we continue to see an increase in the number of affordable homes being built because of the city's continued commitment to investing in financially and in staff resources into the affordable housing programs, such as the inclusionary housing program. So we had 24 families make Longmont their home in an affordable unit in 2021 due to this program. We do anticipate a large uptick in the number of units in the next several years because of the projects in the pipeline, which we kind of mentioned already, but overall, that also means that we need to maintain our existing affordable housing stock. And even though we gained by 24, we lost 4 that aged out of the prior affordable housing program. And so really it's only a 20 unit net gain. So we're watching that year over year. In terms of our developments that are in progress, we've seen a 24% increase in the number of developments subject to the inclusionary housing requirement. The distribution between ownership type, so for sale and rental projects, is fairly close. You can see here that we are seeing a decrease in the number of units being provided on site to meet the inclusionary housing requirements and an increase in the fee and lieu option. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. So we did have to combine the 2021 and 2022 numbers here, just the way that it's reported, and with our staff turnover, there was only one way to glean the numbers. So typically going forward, you'll see that more on a breakdown, but you can still see the progress. Basically what this shows us is, other than our fee and lieu versus on-site choices, that the inclusionary housing program is in no way slowing down development in Longmont. So our fee and lieu, we've seen a steady increase in the number of developers from year to year that select fee and lieu. The majority of rental developments select fee and lieu for sure. That was 50% in 2021, 70% is projected for 2022, and 60% is projected for 2023 to select that option. You can see that we are, from 2020 to 2022, we are doing a incremental increase, but then according to what we have in our pipeline, there's going to be a lot coming forward, especially if those projections hold with what's been going on.
Molly, can I ask you a question? Again, just because I'm new, could you explain fee and lieu?
Oh, sure. And stop me on anything like that, because I'm not sure how much Kathy went into depth in prior years or anything like that. So to meet the city's inclusionary housing requirement, for all market rate developments, you must provide 12% of the units is in affordable form, either for sale or for rent, or choose a fee and lieu option instead of providing the units on site. Or there's a slew of options where you can come up with something creative, do a mix, partner with a nonprofit to provide your units. There's a lot of options there. But generally what we're seeing is the fee and lieu is the most attractive option to developers. So that fee, those fees would all conglomerate, which you can see here, we could be close to the 6 million mark by 2024. Then the city would then reinvest those funds into new units, do a constant, pool them together to provide units in a different way. Yeah. So the middle tier pipeline, so affordable form under the inclusionary housing program is for rentals below 50% of the area median income. You have to have units that have rents or rents that are at affordable to that group or below. And then for sale, it's 80% of the area median income or below. The 80 to 120% is generally considered middle tier or attainable housing. And our inclusionary housing program does not require middle tier, but if a developer chooses to include middle tier units, then that reduces the amount of the affordable requirement they have to meet. So we are watching this because we are in need of this tier as well, but it doesn't qualify for subsidy from HUD or from our affordable housing funds because it's officially out of that affordable bracket. So we did, so overall, we are expecting to add 5,824 homes to our total housing stock by the end of 2024. 732 of those are expected to be affordable. This has us on track to meet our 200 unit a year goal. I feel like I'm skipping ahead on you. Maybe not. Anyways, when it comes to middle tier, the number of units are really much lower than what we're getting for affordable. We are happy to report that the Baker Street townhomes and the Denio West townhomes were completed in 2021 and are available and in our stock now. However, those are the only 2 projects now in the whole pipeline that meet this income bracket, because the Highlands townhomes were we were planning to meet this middle tier bracket, but they have just been priced out, we just heard, based on construction cost escalation. It's just not feasible to build in this bracket. So that's something we're watching as a city. So what's on the radar? So like I just mentioned, we know, well, backing up. First of all, in 2020, we completed our consolidated plan that really guides our CDBG funding. It does some pieces of a housing needs assessment, and we could definitely see from the data that we had a large gap for rental units that served households below 40% AMI. So we are actually flush with units that are serving that 60% range, which is the kind of the max HUD range for affordable rental. So the city, in response to this, went ahead and reduced the affordable threshold to 50% of AMI for inclusionary housing. So we're trying to just focus the units that come in to meet that lower household income bracket. But then you can also see on this chart that when you get to that income range of 75,000 or more, which is closer to the middle tier range, you can see the gap is starting to widen again. So we are watching these 2 segments of our housing stock. So we know that there's a gap. We really need to serve the 40% and below. And now we're just starting to track data on that middle tier group. I should also mention that this data that you're looking at is from that 2020 consolidated plan. So this gap is probably wide due to COVID, especially for those 40% and below. So something else we're just keeping watch on is sales prices, and this is from 2 angles. First of all, sales prices keep rising, and so that really trickles down and further stresses a lot of aspects of the issues that are affecting housing and the whole spectrum of housing. So we're watching that and trying to just react and plan for that as much as possible on some of the projects. Additionally, the maximum sales price for for sale units that are provided under the inclusionary housing program have not been revised since 2018 when the ordinance was put into effect. So that is something that we have a priority to address. Really, that makes sure that the maximum price that a developer can sell an affordable for sale unit at is still affordable to people in the target income. We're also seeing that when a project is ideally located, well, I skipped one, the fee in lieu. It's clearly the most popular option in our program. We would like to analyze why and ensure that the result is best serving the city's affordable housing goals. So is more fee in lieu versus more on-site units really going to give us the best outcome? We want to track that and analyze it. Once you can see that the fee in lieu is looking like it by 2024 it's going to be pretty high. So we will definitely start planning for how to prioritize and target those funds to meet our goals specifically. And incentivizing providing units in on-site in key areas rather than fee in lieu. So we're seeing when a project is ideally located near transit, job opportunities, and core services, many of the incentives that we have for affordable housing are already provided due to their location. So they already get density and height bonuses, maybe because they're on the Main Street corridor or something like that. So we're seeing a concentration of market rate units in those key areas and the fee in lieu option being selected instead. So we want to look at, is there opportunities to further incentivize affordable when those other incentives are already baked in, so that we can make sure to get units in those transit corridors, et cetera. And then finally, we would eventually like to see data on who the IH program is serving. So what are the characteristics of the households that are moving into units provided by the inclusionary housing program? So through developer investment, basically. So those are some things we're tracking or on our radar to dig into further here in the next year. That's the end of the presentation. So I will mention that your snapshot document was in your packet. Before we take this to council on June 7th, just this week, we were tweaking some of the just graphical representations to make sure they read really well. So I could go ahead and follow up after this with the revisions that were made. The data is all the same. We're just making sure the graphs make sense. So I can provide them.
Thanks, Molly. Does anyone have questions for Molly? Kim?
This was super helpful, I think, especially to see what the fee in lieu provides. And I just wonder if there's been any long-term planning when development has kind of capped in our area and we won't be seeing those funds come through, like the sustainability of that offering.
So the fee in lieu option, well, all of IH would still be applicable if at one point we kind of cap out on new development and move into redevelopment. This would still apply. So we might still be able to see that in a good number. Maybe it would change the amounts coming in because the number of units are more limited. But that we at least expect this to be a long-term method of investment. I don't think that we have any sort of timelines out of planning when really that threshold might come into play. So that's something we can put on our list to watch.
For affordable housing units, so when developers have to, or not have to, when they choose to designate some of their development for affordable housing, how long is that designated? Like, does it expire, or what's the parameters around that? Just to compare the two.
We currently have a 30-year deed restriction that's required for those provided units.
That's great. Thank you.
Other questions for Molly? Molly, I was really glad to see you talking a little bit about wanting to, dig in more on who is being served as well as why the fee in lieu. Like my initial hunch is that like there's a sense of we should not have mixed income housing in the same area, or developers can't quite figure out the best ways to get like, more affordable housing in with the same units that they're doing that's our market rate, and kind of understanding more about that I think is going to be really helpful. So I am glad to see that is on the roadmap for your team and for us looking at that data. It's great to have like the money, and then as sort of Kim was alluding to, like there's a certain point at which we're looking at, infill versus actually having room to build stuff. And so like, what does that look like? And, it's much different when there's less and less space to actually construct an affordable housing development. It's great if we get the money. It's not so great if like the land is limited and we really can't do those affordable developments. So I'll be interested in the outcomes of that. Other questions or comments for Molly? All right. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you.
And thanks to Deb and Kayleen as well, and welcome. There's probably a lot ahead of you.
Thank you.
All right, I think the three of us are going to.
Oh, you're done with everything?
Yeah, we did all the two one.
Wow,
Already.
you are fast.
Not ready for it.
Yeah, no, I'm this is what the next subject has been on my mind forever. So yeah.
I'm more than ready. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Have a great night.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Hi, Aliberto. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we are on to your agenda item.
All right, can I control it from here?
Human services funding conversation.
Oh, yes. See, where do I know where, is it in, just gonna go to L?
Yeah.
For the L drive? Okay.
Right,
I'll get there. You guys get to see me drive through our crazy filing system. It's all under Roni. Roni is where it is. Yeah, we had a lot of stuff. You guys get to see me go through all of this. We are in May. I will go ahead and bring up my PowerPoint presentation. Slideshow. Beginning, but I need to share the screen, right? Okay, so let me share the screen. How do I share the other? Okay. Wait, that's first. This is mine. Okay. So we have been having this conversation for quite some time, and rightfully so. This is an important conversation, and we want to make the most educated decision, and which is best for the city of Longmont and its residents, and for our nonprofit partners as well. So I have been really delving deep into what our previous meeting in April, the notes that Michelle took and how she guided us through that conversation. And so I have come up with, I think I tried to be as close as to what her recommendations were as possible, and we'll go over them here in a second, what those recommendations were. But I just wanna, I hope that tonight we can get to some sort of, here's how we're moving forward. Here's where we're putting our flag, and if not, that is okay, we have time. But I have some ideas and to share with the board, okay? And for those that are on virtually, we can't see you, so just speak up if you want to stop me for a question or comment. All right. Okay, how do I get going? There you go. So kind of a catch up, like I think I just went over it. We've been working for a while. We had two main issues that we wanted to solve. We have housing as a top priority, but we rarely ever reach the level of funding that we would want or desire as it being a top priority. So that's one of the issues we've been wanting to solve. Then the other issue is that we have disparities between agencies, very large disparities, and sometimes between, I guess there's a third issue that I didn't address in this work, and that's how do we deal with the new agencies. I think that may have to be a different conversation. I just realized I did address it in this PowerPoint. So I know we had some conversation about it. But for now, when I looked at these two, and here are the recommendations that came out of the April meeting. So Michelle led us through the conversation, facilitated, and here's the 4 things that I took away. I have the pictures from those big post-it notes. One is continue to assign a percentage of funding to each priority area, which is what we do every year. So that seems to be, consensus. We should consider that. We do want to consider ceilings and floors, but there was a desire of the board to bring back historical averages of awards. And so my work in between the last meeting and this, and I did send, and I can bring it up if we want to look at the Hunkin spreadsheet that I created. I did send it to Caitlin to review, but we can bring it up. Is I went back to 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019. So 4 years of awards. And I created averages, so I'll show this in a second. And of course, encourage more resources in priority areas by announcing percentages. Again, there was a piece on transparency. And I think so 3 and 4 are really addressing that desire that the board has for transparency in the process. So with that in mind, here is some of the work that I did. So this is the average, this is the historical average of award per program per priority area. And so these look fine, right? So these are the priority areas, right? So this is the average 27,000, 20,000 we see. They're all, I mean, safety and justice, which usually is our last priority, is lower, which makes sense. Education and skill building, as I mentioned before, they're always high, primarily because there's so many of them. But the challenge is, and this is a challenge that we've had, is that we have outliers. So here are the outlier by average, right? These are averages. Here are the outliers. So in housing stability, we have someone we have an average of 90,000, and then there's a high and a low 5,000, right? So the disparity is 84,000, right? And that's the challenge. Look at same thing with self-sufficiency. You know, down the line, you see these huge disparities. Some of it is because people don't know what to apply for, or they've always been applying for 2,000 since however long. They don't know that, you know, because we haven't been transparent about what people can apply with. And so part of that is because that's kind of what the board wanted. The board didn't want to tell people what and how much to apply for. So this is the challenge, that we can see the great disparity in the priority areas. So here are the two ideas that I came up with for us to, and again, I would like to get to a finale, but doesn't mean we have to tonight. So one is doing a ceiling approach using, instead of adding floors, the board could use historical average to set ceiling for priority area. So like I showed you the outliers, and we use the outliers as the ceilings, right? Those are the outliers of each average based on historical average, the highest amount that people ask. And I kind of rounded some of those, I rounded up or rounded down, trying to keep a whole number, right? So, but basically we could say, we could tell them, you know, we're gonna say that the max you can apply for is 90,000 in housing stability. In 2022, as a context, and what we've done since 2017 is we said no one agency could receive more than 50% of the priority area. So whatever the board, every year we've looked at the priority areas, and I think we've only changed it once. The board has changed, and so for example, we moved self-sufficiency up, where before self-sufficiency was a little bit further down, right? So the board could decide to change that again, and we could probably have that conversation in June. You know, we really haven't done a lot of work around a human services needs assessment, so it's a little bit hard to do that. It's just with Karen's transition, it's just been a lot going on. So we could do it this way. We could say we're going to set ceilings based on historical averages of our outliers, and you can see how it goes down the line. Or we could say, well, we want to stay closer to our priority area allocations, and we could do it by maybe we reduce it from 50% to 25%, right? We could say, you know, so you can see it's a little bit different. This is again, I'm using 2022 priorities. The board can decide to change them for 2023, but this is based on 2022 numbers, and this is based on what we got. We don't know what we're gonna get yet, right? We really don't know that until sometime in midsummer, late summer, because we don't know what the projection for the general fund is, and this comes out of we get 3% of the general fund. So we don't know what our total is gonna be. So this is just based on what we did last year, okay? So we go one of those two ways. Then as far as transparency, I suggest that we would put historical average of awards in per priority, and then share what the ceilings based on whatever the board chooses tonight or later. And we've never told them, we never told the agency, we've always told the council at the council presentation that we have that the board made this decision, we wanted 23%. But the fact is, we never get that, right? We tell the council as we wanted, but then we tell them what we actually got. But we've never told agencies applying, this is how the board has prioritized funding, right? It's never been there. We just told them, here are 6 things and our 6 priority areas. We've never been transparent about how much we've assigned. So those are I'm gonna stop sharing. Those are what I propose to the board. And then we can have a discussion that can get guidance from the board and go back to the drawing board if that's the case. And we come back and we have to decide. So I will update you. I know we want to do it early, but the coalition, the collaborative has set the tentative date of July 15th to release it.
Okay.
So we know that. So we have really until the July meeting to decide if we don't want to decide tonight. But we also got to set the priorities, and we can do that in June, and that's fine. Or we can decide that this, because we haven't done a lot of work on needs assessment, they can stay as is, right? I don't know, whatever the board thinks. We just haven't had the bandwidth to do. Karen and I always dreamed of doing a refresh of the human services. We just really haven't had the bandwidth to do it, to be honest.
Are there questions or feedback based on what Eliberto presented in terms of the averages, kind of where everything deviates, and the proposals?
I guess my input would be based on, if we go back, I think it's 3 months when we did we did 4 different models with the ceiling and the cap. We couldn't make the algorithm work. It's only 4 models, albeit, but with a ceiling and a cap, we busted our budget every time, our presumed budget. So in my mind, mathematically, I'm sure we can make an algorithm that works. To what extent and what, mathematical duress. So I guess I would be leaning toward an average. Setting an average, and when we get requests in, arranging them around that average so that we can preload to our budget, not set caps in, because the caps or ceilings and floors don't account for the amount of budget we get. Right. And Eliberto, like you said, that's really our one wild card, because we don't know that. So if we say $20,000 or $150,000, it makes no difference if we get, depending on what we get from the general fund. So I think we all almost have to do mathematically some sort of an average or a floating sort of mathematical model that will adjust with the amount we get each year. But I'm certainly open to suggestion, and in my mind, I think that's how I feel this balancing the best each time. Or else I feel like what I foresee coming is we're either gonna bust the budget, or we're gonna be in a situation where we have money to give away. And I think we're trying to avoid that in either direction.
Right, well, yeah, that's a good point. About busting the budget, I think you only bust the budget if you decide to fund everybody.
Right.
You know, I mean, we really can't bust the budget. We can't spend in a deficit. So what'll happen is we'll just fund till we can't fund.
Right, that's a good point. Maybe we don't fund everyone that applies.
Right.
Good point.
My sense is the same though, Stacey, that like putting the caps and the floors doesn't really get us closer to like guiding. Average, like I think providing averages and giving folks a sense of like, our highs and lows, like it gives them a rough idea. And if we tell them a rough idea of like the percentages, like I feel like the transparency on those, like, if I feel like if we adjust too much, we may end up just in like a completely the opposite situation, but still problematic. And so maybe we just start this year with more transparency of here are the averages, here's kind of the deviations of it, and here's the percentage that, you know, we anticipate allocating to each of the areas. And then at least people have that information.
So for the minutes, because I don't have a pen, so let me get this right, not right. So just so what I'm hearing is we would provide in the application guide the outlier section that I shared with you all, right? So show here's our highs and lows, right? And we would also provide averages. We wouldn't worry about ceilings and floors. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm suggesting. And though I would say that, you know, I think sharing, these are our 6 priority areas, and we anticipate allocating approximately 25% of funds to housing stability.
Okay.
Like percentages.
Something we took, oh, Kim, go ahead.
I like the idea of the cap though. For some reason, I really like, Eliberto, the average cap, because I think that might lead to less disparities, because if someone reads an average, they see that as an average. So perhaps there are organizations that are getting, you know, twice that amount. So I think it does control the awards a little bit more, just by virtue of having those caps. I mean, I like that option that you gave, that first scenario.
The one based on average outliers, the highest, like make the ceiling the highest, that's of a ceiling based on average high awards.
Yeah, because then we're setting it, and it's less likely that a few agencies would be asking for those really large amounts. It norms it a little bit. I guess that's how I'm interpreting it. Of course, everybody's going to have their own version of interpreting what a cap really means, and maybe they'll all shoot for that cap. I guess that's the concern as well.
Yeah.
The other thing is like, you know, I'm thinking through who some of those outliers may have been, and I'm just sort of like, it's recollection. I haven't gone back to look to see who it was or anything, but you know,
It's in the spreadsheet I sent you.
Oh, okay. Well, nobody else has that, so I feel like that's not as well.
I can bring it up.
It's okay. Actually, I think I've got it. The thing that comes to mind for me is that some of the ones that are those outliers are doing fairly significant work. Like, so there's a reason they're outliers, and it's not just because they're, you know, it's a huge disparity. I think to me at least, the bigger problem isn't like the problem isn't these folks asking for a lot, because we can always scale back. It's the folks not asking for as much as they could do something with. And then we sort of are like, I mean, we could blow the budget. I think we could have blown the budget every year, and we just sort of adjust our score line of where we don't give 100% of what they've asked for. But I think like, I was trying to, sorry. So I think like Boulder County Farmers Market is one that tops out in like food and nutrition, because they have multiple programs. And so in the same priority area. So like last year, it looks like they had a farmers market food assistance, and then they also did farm to early care and education, which are 2 fairly different programs. So I don't know. I see what you're saying, Kim, on like it norming it. I'm not sure if we necessarily want to announce those caps or if we want to see what comes in and see like, you know, kind of what the deviation is from, like, what is the average request and what is the deviation of those requests? Because in some of the priority areas, like it's much smaller, right? Like versus some that is much larger. And so it might be that we want to do it a little bit differently in the different priority areas based on what comes in.
I think that's where the algorithm will come in really handy, because maybe we can create that normalization within our scoring system in a better way, perhaps. So maybe it's not catching it on the front end of the application process, but in our scoring system, we can help that norming of, but like you said, being sensitive to the work that they're doing as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think about, like, you know, housing projects tend to cost more than food and nutrition, or, you know,
rental assistance, or, yeah. The one thing I do wanna make the board aware of, you know, we always choose the algorithm or the allocation formula way before you guys see, that we do not, I mean, this is part of, you know, when I first took this job, Karen and I had this conversation, this is part of putting the board above reproach.
Yeah.
Right, in the sense that we are not messing with the scoring system once we see the applications. The score system is set, and then we apply. So to that extent, I think we want to be careful about using the scoring formula to norm. Not that it can, we just want to be careful about that. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I was, because I have a child who's screaming mommy outside the door next to me.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm on the phone. In my perspective, like, I kind of think that it's less of, like, I think, Kim, to your point of like norming it within a one area. I think we talked about maybe having like groups of people do each different area. So it's sort of like a handful of people doing it and really digging in deep on a particular priority area, or, you know, each of us does 2 priority areas or something like that. And then, but using, essentially, get rid of all the names and stuff and just look at the numbers of like, how much did they request? What are their scores? How do we like match those up? Like, I think that's okay to kind of use that to, you know, if we kind of anonymize looking at that and really just trying to figure out like where should our score cutoffs be. In my head, I'm visualizing like plotting all the housing stability ones on a graph of like how much they are and what their score is and kind of where that falls, and then figuring out, here's the total bucket, here's how we're going to break it up between them, because this score shouldn't get anything, this score should get 100% type of thing. But
Separate question, in the final, in the application we get from them, does it say number of individuals served? It does. So we can weight scores based on population served. No?
You can, but having run a program, I'm gonna push back, because I ran a
Okay.
program, I used to run this program called Circles.
Mhm.
That we didn't serve a ton of people,
Mhm.
but the program was life-changing.
Sure.
I mean, and I have stories of people who, you know, and we used to apply to Longmont, and we usually got 10 to 15,000. And you know, we only serve 10 Longmont people.
Sure.
But-
I completely understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, so yes, and we have to consider that too, right? It's the old
Yep.
inch deep, mile wide, or mile deep, inch wide.
Sure.
and I think that is something that should come out in like the way we score. We're looking at like, what is the impact? I think, you know, I can't remember the wording of the question, but one of them is essentially looking at like, are their how do their outcomes essentially fit with like what they're saying they're going to do? And it's, you know, if they're asking for a whole lot of money and they're only serving a few people and they're like only superficially serving those people, that should be a lower score, right? Whereas if they're serving a small number of people, but serving them, I think queer asterisk is one we've talked about where like therapy is really expensive. Like, it's $200 a session and, but, you provide 10 sessions over the course of the year, that's $2,000 for one person, but that may be,
life-saving.
Literally life-saving, right?
Yeah.
So, but hopefully that sort of thing comes out in our scoring of like, what is the measure of the impact that they're.
Well, we are tonight also going to look at the application because Erica and I are in the midst of creating the new application for 2023. So we would love your impact. In fact, we have a meeting Monday. And so any feedback we get from you all, because we're negotiating with the city of Boulder and Boulder County as we speak. We are drafting the new application. So, but we'll get to there in a second. That's the next item.
Yep. I think, we have talked about this quite a bit. I do want to make sure that like folks feel comfortable with where we land. I'm going to start with what I think I'm hearing is that we all agree on the transparency pieces that Eliberto has proposed. Looks like that is a fair assessment of, we want to disclose the averages, we want to disclose the highs and lows, we want to disclose roughly the percentage of our funding that we're going to put to each priority area. Does that sound correct?
Okay.
So that is a check mark. I think the open question and what it sounds like I'm hearing, but please correct me if I'm wrong, because I know not everyone has spoken on this, is we anticipate that we'll have some kind of cap, but we are not going to disclose that in the application, but rather use the information of the applications we get to help determine how we're going to set those. Okay. Great. Because if we get a whole bunch of things where the average is like $10,000 and the high is 12 and the low is 8, like, okay, we maybe don't need a cap there type of thing. It's probably not going to happen. And so we'll have to do something there. But I think what I'm hearing is that we're looking at some other mechanism to figure out where that is, rather than like preemptively saying you can have 50% of the priority area or you can have the historical high.
Perfect. I love it. I think that's is that, I don't know if we need a motion for that or not, Caitlin.
I think this is just guidance to staff in terms of like setting up the application. So I don't think we need a motion.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I will come back with a final. So what we're doing here is I will come back with a final application guide in the June or I don't know when our July meeting is. It probably has to be June, because in July we're releasing. No, I gotta do it before. I gotta do it by the June meeting. Okay. I will come back with a draft application guide that hopefully we can finalize on the June meeting. All right. So my next agenda item is the actual application. And this again feedback, because as I've shared, this is always in partnership with 2 other government agencies. So of course, their advisory boards the county doesn't use an advisory board, they just use staff. City of Boulder does have a committee that they use to help, do what you do, your counterparts in the city of Boulder. So we all bring together, we come together and we share our input from our committees on the application. So I think what I want to do is, I don't know if folks have it or if they want to put it up on the screen. I can do either way. The application, I just gotta find it.
Can you go back to the folder? Should be.
And I can
It's the second one.
I can walk us through it. And this will be good for the new board members too, who've never seen this. What is this thing? All right, do this. What's it say?
Just click. Sorry.
Oh, right. Okay, one. Oh, come on. Okay, just stop. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'll share screen. Let me go back here. It's good. Yeah. Let me share. Okay. All right. So for the new board members, this is the old EC Impact application, and I have it right here, so I'll make notes on this one. So let me walk through this so that you all see what the staff reviewed of this application and what the board reviewed of this application. So technically, the staff reviews all of the agency part of the application. And so I'm gonna walk through it real quick. I don't have the evaluation, but so Karen and I would look at how well they provided their, for me, strategic goals is super important. I wanted to know, did they do their goals? But we had a lot of questions in here, so we looked at this question. It's really about planning. And then we also looked at inclusive board and staff practices. Not that the staff couldn't look at that, but this was in our purview in the staff, not that the board couldn't look at it, but this was in our purview of the scoring piece, not in the boards, right? So I look at what kind of plan they have, how are they working on creating diversity and inclusion in their boards and their staff. And then here is the agency projected clients. So they may be applying, because we fund programs, so they may have multiple programs and they may serve a lot more people throughout their whole agency, and that's what staff looks at. We'll get to a point where it's about the program, but we look at the totality. We ask them about their demographics. We want to know that. And then we have an agency bucket, again, or budget. The board looks at the program, we look at the agency level. So we want to see, and we're looking, and in this, for us, this is about diversity of funding, right? So if all your funding is coming from one place, that concerns us. Because if that funding source goes away, then how viable are you? So these are the types of categories they could choose. We like their, they also have their, and they could add more. Under this other, they could add as much as they want. And then we wanted to know, what, do you have a shortfall or excess? And then we would ask, there's a question about, in a narrative, they can explain why they had either one. And then this is a big one for me, is want to know how much reserves they had. Maybe best practice is to have at least a 3-month operating reserve. I've seen some that have 6, I've seen that had 12 months, which is quite a bit of reserve. But best practice is 3 months of operating reserve. And then here, again, these are partners. So City of Boulder had multi-year grants. We didn't, but they could. Again, here's where they would enter their agency board and staff demographics. And residents, we just kind of wanted to know how long they had been there, just things like that, just information. This is, now we're gonna transition, staff does not review, not that we don't read it, but our scoring wasn't on this. This is where now the board takes over. So we have these 16 goals that we use, and we're actually gonna try and make it a little more simpler. And I have a document to how it connects, those goals connect to our priorities, but the board doesn't have to worry about that, because that's more in the background. Not the board doesn't see it or can't, not that it won't impact how the board reviews it, but that again is more of a negotiation with the city of Boulder and Boulder County. And so we have to do our back end work to make sure, and we did, the board last year did a great job. And we created new outcome statements for ourselves that we want to look for. And we do share that with the agencies, by the way, that's in the agency, in the application guide. But it's really about, we have to negotiate with the city of Boulder. They have different ones, and so we just have to make sure they all work well together. So they get to choose their goal area, but these are the questions that we look at, that you all look at. What is it, what are they trying to change? What are they trying to address with their program? What do they expect to see? They can describe their program. Now, this is a question that Longmont added, and here's where we start taking your perspective. We added this question right here about identifying inequities that the program is trying to address. That was something that we added. Then we asked about their target population, and if they've done a needs assessment, how do they know that what they're doing is what they should be doing? The program rationale, does it have, this is really around, are they using best practices? Are they doing any type of evidence-based type of work? And then we want to know how are they engaging the community to ensure that the right people, or the people who need the service, are getting the service. And then we really want to know, and this is part of, the board's work on ensuring that the programs that we're funding are meeting our priorities. How well do they evaluate? How do they use that evaluation to change, et cetera? So those are the main boards, and in Boulder, you can get money to do an evaluation project. That's not typically what we've done. Mostly it's Boulder stuff. Then what we did last year is, so to your question, how many folks are served, this is where it comes in. And we get their demographics, right? And then for demographics, income level stuff, they get a chance to talk about that. And then here's where you really get to see, so here's the budget, this is what you're funding. You're not funding the agency, you are funding the program. So I think that's an important thing to point out. This funding is program funding, not agency funding. And so here you get to see how much funding they're getting for the program, how they want to use the program. And we added this because we wanted to know, all right, so Longmont doesn't want to fund 100% of your program. We want to know how much you're asking from us, but then we want to know how much are other funders putting into the program, right? And so then we told expenses, and of course, do you have any revenue shortfalls for that program or excess? And they get a chance to narrate on their budget. And then finally, this is new. We used to give them and you guys will get this too, we used to give them a logic model. This actually came from the city of Boulder. They changed it. They said this was, and so we all looked at it and said, yeah, that's fine. So here's what we think. So they told you about all the program, they give you all about who they're serving, how they're, now they're gonna tell you, here's what we're doing. Right, so how many service units are they providing, classes, workshops, whatever? When are they doing it? These are 1-year grants. What partners do they have? What are they using? What's their outcomes? Well, the increase, decrease, whatever that may be, right? And how are they gonna, how often do they measure, and what's the indicator? And they can have as many of these as they want, right? So there's only one there, but they can have as many of these as they want. And so you all judge to the question of, does this program meet one of our priority areas? That answer is both in the narrative, but really right here, right? So how well are they tracking the work that they're doing? So that's the application, and tonight I was hoping to just get some ideas, feedback, guidance as we go into negotiations the next. It's gonna take us a few weeks to get through it, but if the City of Longmont Housing and Services Advisory Board has ideas that you want us to consider, I want to kind of hear some of that tonight. And you can always email me too, by the way, later, if you think of something over the weekend, say, hey, thought about this, I can bring it to the partners.
Got it. Deanna.
So I don't know if this is too big of a thing to raise, but I've been sort of thinking about this concept of diversity and board demographics. And I'm not exactly sure how to encapsulate this, but I feel like some of our questions don't really necessarily get at the full scope of diversity that's possible, right? So specifically, for example, when I toured Center for People with Disabilities, like one of their key points is that the majority of their board is made up of people with disabilities, right? But that's nowhere in the diversity questions for board membership. I don't know. I mean, we could just be turning it into a huge can of worms where we're asking a lot of questions about diversity, but I do think there should be some opportunity to open that up, because serving your clientele by having your clientele on your board is pretty important in terms of diversity as well. And then secondly, I was thinking about when we reviewed all of these applications last year, like I dinged people because they weren't answering the questions, right? So they don't read they don't read the questions, and it's very frustrating. So I don't know if there's something that we can do to really emphasize to people at the very beginning, this application is different. You are being scored on how you answer the questions. So please read the questions and answer the questions. And I don't want to be too formulaic. And sometimes I dinged people, and I knew that their missions and their services were serving the things that we were trying to get across. They just weren't answering the questions. So I don't know, maybe we just need to really try and hammer to them to answer the questions, please.
I would like to put that in red, big, bold letters. That just drives me up. I think it'll probably go in the application guide, but yeah, I mean, when I was taught, and I went to multiple grant writing courses, and they always said, answer the question. I think what happens, Deanna, is that because these folks write so many grants, and there's sometimes so many similarities, they just copy and paste.
And that's really what it felt like. It did definitely seem like I'd seen a lot of the same answers from the prior years too. So, which I get. I mean, these are onerous applications. They have a lot of applications to do, but if they want the money, they should read the application. Like we shouldn't have to do the work for them. So
I appreciate that so much. It just drives me nuts. I just know I worked hard. Read the question. Just read the question.
Yeah. I like the changes I think that Boulder proposed for the scope of work to put it there. I like that it's in the application and not like an attachment like it has been in years past. And it kind of just puts all the information together. And in some ways it highlights the fact of like output is different from outcome, and we actually need to know how you're measuring this.
I will say, we like it too. We're still learning the functionality. And so we're hoping that we can do that, but we are still learning the functionality of Founded. Eric and I have been in several meetings and trainings already. So we're hoping that we can continue that, but I can't guarantee it because we don't know the entire And what we can do that's really cool is it found it has a branching. So you won't see this year because sometimes you can see all the bolder answers too, right? But we were able now to branch. So the agency part will be the same, but if they're applying to Longmont, they will branch to a Longmont section of the application. Or if they're applying to Boulder, they will branch to a Boulder section. If they're applying for both, they gotta do both. But that's only the program part. They don't have to do the agency for both. That'll be the same for all of the 3 partners. So I'm excited about that.
Other questions or feedback or things that we want to have Eliberto and Erica take to the coalition on this? Okay.
Like I said, this will take a few weeks, so if anybody has an idea, email me. Yeah, we have meetings set up for the next few weeks. So, but we do want to get it done. It's going to go out in July, so we don't want to wait too long. It needs to get finalized so we can get it out. Hopefully by our June meeting it gets finalized.
Okay. Great.
All right. Next agenda item.
Is site visits.
We've had several.
Yes.
El Comité is our first one. And I'm not sure who
So
did.
that is Eliberto and I. And we did that. Let's pull up here real quick. Here it is. We did that on March 7th. Eliberto and I went to El Comité and we spoke with, I'm going to read from this a little bit just because it's been a little while. So, and Erica, I can even forward this to you if you just want to include, and then you can cut and paste. So we met with Donna Lovato, who is the executive director, and Riley Nelson, who is their grant writer. And El Comité is an organization born out of the city of Longmont Ombudsman Department dating from the 1980s, and they serve Hispanic and Latino clients, not only in the Longmont area, but also really, she talked about branching down to ICE centers down in South Denver. So they have a pretty broad reaching outreach. They've received funding from the city of Longmont for many years. The services that they offer are ESL classes, and those are ongoing. They have citizenship and legal support for citizenship, testing and processing. They have immigration, green card citizenship, unpaid wages, and other legal representation. They do referrals for safe shelter and housing, Section 8 housing, etc. They do custom case management to increase self-sufficiency. They're holding a series of financial classes that sound pretty incredible. They're bringing in speakers from nationally recognized speakers and programs to come into the community here to teach financial classes to their population. And they also provide notary public and translation services. So a very broad reaching organization with broad reaching case support. The pros that they, that I guess they, when after speaking that I perceived that they provide to the community are they're very plugged into our community, very personalized, greeting everyone in the door. That might be just a function of their small facility. They kind of have to, which is they're very plugged in. They're leveraging relationships. Oh, this was kind of key too. They leverage a lot of relationships since they've been around for a while with other organizations for management and client referrals. So they're really they're networked and branched seemingly very well within the community. That was to an impressive level, really. So that it's not just they're standing on their own 2 feet, but they're leveraging other organizations resources as well. They have 7 employees and are using employees to the fullest. They're really maximizing each individual's skills. Each individual is playing many different roles within the organization. Something there, one of the challenges that they face is they have been losing a lot of employees to the city and to Boulder County because they can't offer the same benefits to their employees. So they have recently obtained health insurance for their employees as of January 2022. And they are offering a health insurance plan that now helps retain those employees, which sounded like a really good, a good tool in their tool chest to gain and maintain their employees. Their needs are a new building specifically. It's a small building they're in. They are using every square inch to the maximum, I would say. So they have a new building that's in process, and they must find a building, and then they can get funding from a federal program. With more space, they plan to hire more caseworkers, and they currently serve 198 cases per month with those 7 full-time equivalents. And their split of clients is about 50-50 male to female. Their ultimate goal, 5-year goal, so not ultimate, but in their 5-year goal is to continue the services that they offer, obtain a bigger space, and so that they can hire more case managers to simply service more of the community. So.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest,
Please.
they haven't sent me the stuff for the desk audit, so I haven't done it. That being said, I can't, they did send me their, they don't do an audit, they have, because they're pretty small, but they do have a CPA review their financials. So it's not a full on audit, and I will say it does look better than it has in a long time. They've increased their assets quite a bit. Comité is a program that we've been funding for a long time. We've also struggled. They struggled. I was going to their board meetings for a while. They've struggled financially. It's just been a challenge. But they are doing better financially at the end of 2020. I have not seen their 2021 financials, but I should have seen. But they are, they are doing better than they have been. Because they were in trouble 2 years ago.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was not looking good for them for a bit there.
That's unfortunate because they, honestly, if to me, just from the interview that we did with them, their network is valuable. The network that they've built is valuable, seemingly. So hopefully they can build the infrastructure to support what, just frankly, staying in business, I guess.
Yeah. So at the end, I do have their 2021 year end information. They did send that to me when I asked for the annual final report. So at 2020 they were doing well. They did, but they still lost $16,000 at the end of 2021. Yeah. They're a valuable organization, but they've struggled to, and like a couple of, it really is the need to diversify their funding. They need to get, they rely a lot on grants and contracts from local governments and local foundations. And they need, and Donna knows this, they need to really strengthen their individual donor base. But it's a challenge. But yeah, they lost 16,000 overall in 2021, which is not, doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're a small agency, 16,000 is it hurts. So.
Yep.
Alrighty. So I think on the agenda there was
Two more.
Caitlin and then me again. Do you want me to just go again, or do you want to go, Caitlin?
So I am actually not gonna go because I didn't attend this one because I was sick and I had a kid with an ear infection, I think, the day. Did you do Meals on Wheels, Stacy?
We did. Ellie Berto and I did Meals on Wheels. Yeah.
go ahead and do that one.
Okay, sounds good. So we did, Alberto and I visited Longmont Meals on Wheels virtually on April 28th. And we spoke with Karen Hale, who is their executive director, and Catherine or Katie Weiser, who is their operations and accounting director. They service, just an overview, they service the elderly and disabled with hot meals in Longmont and Niwot. And they are, this was interesting to me. I'm just gonna say this, I'm not sure how many people know this, but I didn't know this about Meals on Wheels, but they are an independent organization. Every Meals on Wheels office is independent. So there is a national charter, but that charter is primarily set up to do lobbying. And they lobby for the Older Americans Act. So Longmont Meals on Wheels was independently started in 1969 after World War II here in Longmont, when the elderly population had lost some people to their younger family members to World War II and required help from the community for their elderly family members. Thought that was very interesting. They have also received funding from the city of Longmont for many years. They do not receive federal or state funding. Meals on Wheels, we talked about that. Meals on Wheels America is primarily a lobbying organization. And they are a 501c3. The services they offer here in Longmont, again, I want to be specific, it's not, every agency does their own thing. They offer ready to eat home meal delivery to the elderly and disabled. And while they do that, they include well checks and are able to follow up on their clientele that are homebound or at home. They service Longmont and Niwot, and they also do a table service at the Longmont Senior Center. So that was a big part of their business. Their kitchen is at the Longmont Senior Center, which is kind of key. So they're really very close to their population. They participate in several different organizations here around town. So their outreach is in Lions Leaf, True Pace, Elevated Supports, a homecoming, and also a homecoming program that supports people, again, elderly and disabled, returning from the hospital. A key to their program is many of the federal programs require that if you receive federal funding, you have to service people that are over 58 years old. But because they don't take federal funding, they can service all ages, which was key for them. They have two other additional programs. They have an emergency pet program because many of their clients have animal companions, which is huge. And they have a good partnership with the Longmont Humane Society for that. They also have a lunchbox program with the Longmont Fire Department to lockbox program with the Longmont Fire Department to allow authorities to enter homes for wellness checks. And a local realtor actually they negotiated with a realtor to provide the lockboxes. So that's pretty great. I have a few more notes, not too much, sorry. I feel like I'm talking a lot. So they're currently serving 969 clients a year. That's down from 1,800 a year pre-pandemic. 1,000 of those pre-pandemic were home deliveries. They're struggling post-pandemic because they lost a lot of their clientele through the table services and not being able to one-on-one greet people. So their in-person lunch started up again in September of 21. Their meal numbers are going back up, specifically their casual usage at the senior center and the number of people being served is still down post-pandemic, but they're seeing an increase and they're optimistic. They have one of the new things that they're working on is a client and volunteer tracking and scheduling, a new system for that, and they're excited about that because it'll really improve their demographic tracking. Right now, they think that, from their manual tracking, their clients are 20 to 25% Latino, a half to 1% Native American, another half to 1% African American, and 1 to 2% Asian. They recruit their clients from the Longmont Senior Center in the Longmont Times Call, Facebook, and social media, and their paid campaigns have been successful. Future, let me see what's here. Seniors, oh yeah, we talked a little bit about this too, that seniors are the second fastest growing demographic in Boulder County. And if I remember some of the notes I read in that enormous binder that I got when I started a couple months ago, that they're the fastest growing demographic in Longmont. I think that was the case. So the older population are there because Longmont Meals on Wheels was finding that the older population is actually leaving Boulder. They're getting priced out and coming to Longmont. So they think that that's why it's growing faster in Longmont. They have a 10-year lease with the city of Longmont for their kitchen at the senior center. And about 10 years ago, they invested they didn't say how much, a fair amount of money in the facilities, and they feel like that is that's in a good place, and they don't have excess capacity, but they feel like they're able to shift their resources for the capacity that is required going forward. And again, their 3 to 5 year trends, they expect their clients to grow and return and surpass their pre-pandemic numbers. Their next steps are changing over to their new client database. They're excited about that. They want to update their ads and start using a translating service for advertising, and also doing some more tabling events to recruit more clients through advertising and brochures.
So it was interesting. I did the desk audit, and I had a really good conversation. So for the most part, they have all of their required documentation. But I went back and looked at, they're one of the first agencies when I started to actually do a desk audit, and I found my notes from 2018. And I had written down there, but I guess I didn't follow up back then, that it was interesting that I couldn't find any accounting procedures outside of their audit. So their audit has a brief description. And so I guess I didn't follow up back then. So I followed up now. And they don't have accounting procedures outside of their audit. And so we talked a little bit about that, and they are working on creating a standalone accounting policy document that will include procurement and purchasing policies, which for the size of agency they are, I was a little surprised by that. That being said, they've done a good job of expanding their board and getting diverse representation on the board. We talked a little about that. So, you know, I just found it interesting that an agency with a multi-million-dollar budget didn't have written procurement and accounting policies outside of whatever is on their audit. I mean, their audit's clean, but they are working on that. That's what they told me. So hopefully next time they will have their own accounting procedures. That's all I have for the desk audit.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Eliberto. And then our last one is focus reentry, which I think Deanna and Eliberto did.
And also Catherine was with us on that one. So I don't know, Catherine, do you want to do it? Do you want me to do it? Do you want to start and I can add whatever?
Yeah, either way is fine. So
Go for it.
I'll fill in, it's fine.
Okay, want me to do it? Okay, I'll start.
Go
So,
ahead.
okay, so focus reentry basically works on assisting people with avoiding recidivism. So they have a pretty comprehensive approach on working with people who've been primarily in Boulder County Jail. They do a lot of outreach. They work on street outreach. They try and work on addressing a lot of the root causes, right? Like making sure that people get housed. They have a mentor program that is pretty comprehensive and successful. They, over the last couple of years, they've tripled their caseload. There was about 100 clients, and most recently they were up to 301 clients. They have a nice diverse board. It's about 33% people of color. There's 6 people on the board. So they track their success measures in terms of a few of their different programs. So for the people that they've managed to get housed, the rate of recidivism is only about 5%. So it's a pretty significant success rate for people that they're able to get housed. And when I'm stealing one of your questions that you had asked them, Catherine, but Catherine had asked about one of their success stories, and the director had relayed that they had a woman who had so many police contacts over and over and back into the system, into the system, into the system. And they worked really hard to get her housed. And since she's been housed, she's had no police interaction or contacts, and that it was a lot of work and it was difficult and a sort of multi-team member approach to getting her into housing and addressing her issues, but that it was a great success story. So I think that's one of the examples, you know, like you can serve a lot of people or you can impact one person in a huge way. And it did seem like they really changed that woman's life for immeasurably the better. Through their mentor program too, they track the recidivism numbers for their mentor program, and the recidivism rate for people participating in the mentor-mentee program is about somewhere usually between 22 and 27%, which is obviously less than or more than the group that they're tracking for housing, but I think it's still a pretty significant success. They also have a basic needs program that they do where they help people with cell phones or bus passes, or they enroll them in Medicaid. They don't track the recidivism rates for that because the services are small enough that it's hard to know whether they're actually substantially impacting them enough to avoid going back into the system. They have had some staffing issues, just like everybody has had. They've adapted to do like a 4-day work week for the case managers to try and give them a little more free time. They're letting them work from home if they need to, flex schedules. I know there were some funding issues, I think, this year, which maybe Eliberto, I don't know if you remember this, but there were some issues with regard to, I think, a missed deadline for a grant because the directors knew and didn't have it calendared correctly, but it seems like they're working hard to build up their reserves. Yeah, I think that's it. Did I miss anything, Catherine?
One of the other things that she did say she was looking for grants for was that one thing they're having trouble with getting staff for is that trauma is a big effector for their staff, that working with these people is traumatic for their staff, and so they're trying to find grants for creative ways to deal with burnout. So they're looking for maybe trying to install a gym or provide paid days off for trauma if people need to get counseling. They're looking at some kind of program for that potentially, so that might be something she was considering looking for grants for in the future, or to raise pay to try and attract people, because she said that they lose staff at a fantastic rate because of the trauma that comes with this work. So that was something that she was investigating grants for in the future. And then the other thing that she said was they work primarily in Boulder, but she wanted to expand more into Longmont and into other cities as well, and that she works with, they work with Hope and the In-Between in Longmont as partner agencies.
So for my part, I wrote down that overall for a small agency, they seem to have all the documentation. Their audit did show a bit of negative cash flow in 2019. So and then she explained what happened. So in 2019 was the first year. So it's a pretty small agency. 2019 was the first year. They actually were under the fiscal agent umbrella of the nonprofit, the Colorado Nonprofit Cultivation Center. It's kind of an incubator for innovative and startup nonprofits. I've heard of them in the past, worked with them in the past. So if you got an idea, you don't have your own 501c3, and you apply to them, and if they find it something that they're willing to invest in, they kind of take care of the governance for you, which is nice for smaller nonprofits to get started. And that was the first year that they were away from that, and they have been getting to the point. It's not that they missed the grant; it's that they So they were, a big part of the granting came from the Denver Foundation. And the Denver Foundation has a cycle. Basically, you can be on for 3 years and you gotta take a year off, I think is how it works. I forget, I've been through that cycle too in the past. So she wasn't aware of that, and so she missed, they lost quite a bit of funding because of that. That being said, they did get a big bump in 2020 from the Health Equity Fund from Boulder. They also received PPP loans, and those have become grants, which have been very helpful. And they also received, they have in 2022, they've gotten a new grant from the Department of Local Affairs. So it feels like they are on an upswing as far as their funding. I just think 2019, 2020 was kind of growing pains and leaving the nest of the cultivation center behind, which was bumpy, but it feels like they are on much more solid ground now. So overall, I think that they, like I said, and I'm assuming they had all their stuff together because they were part of the nonprofit cultivation center, who is the one that creates the best practices. So I'm assuming that they helped them get all of their best practice documentation in order. So I was pretty impressed with what they had, and it's understandable now knowing that they were actually under the MPCC.
Got it. Awesome.
Can I just add in, sorry, thanks for clarifying about that grant. I didn't want to make it, in retrospect, that probably made it look like they're flaky, but I will say that definitely they seemed very creative and interested in exploring new things to try and accomplish their goals, which I appreciated. So thanks for fixing my error about their missing the deadline. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone who did site visits. I know, these can be fun, but they can also be challenging and take additional time, but it's an awesome way to get to know some of our agencies and talk a little more closely with them outside of just the funding process. So thank you all for doing that. The last item on our agenda is announcements and other business. Does anyone have anything? Eliberto.
So Eric and I have been talking, we just wanted to check in with folks about, this is our second hybrid meeting. And just wanted to check in to see, is this okay? Do we want to go back to all virtual? Do we want to go back to in person? And just wanted to get a temperature check on this.
Deanna?
I mean, I really appreciate the flexibility that you guys are offering here for us to each sort of set what we're comfortable with and what works best for us. And like, I'm just getting over bronchitis. It's nice to be able to log into the meeting and not miss it, right? So I appreciate this hybrid approach. Hopefully someday we'll all be able to be in person together again, but I like this format. So, but I'm also open to whatever.
I ditto exactly what you said, Deanna. Yeah, I appreciate the flexibility. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I was going to say the same. I think, with as much, concern with various variants and so forth, and, folks with kids that, for me, it's super helpful in the sense of like, okay, I've got my kids and, mostly they're okay. But if they needed something, I am here. So I appreciate the flexibility. I also think that as we go forward, having the hybrid approach does give us more flexibility in terms of diversity of board, and if people are traveling and can log on, or things, all sorts of things come up. And so being able to do it hybrid, I think, is a really great way to help make sure that we can include folks.
Okay.
The only thing that I would say, if we want to keep hybrid, is if maybe I could get an update of who will be in person and who's going to be virtual, just so that if we are going to have a majority of people in person. I mean, this is a small conference room, so that we can kind of be spaced out and I can figure out a space for everybody, or if, if it's this type of setting, then this should be fine, but just so that we are aware as far as
Right,
accommodation.
that is true, that does help us, because we do have bigger rooms, we just got to,
Figure out the virtual aspect of it.
right,
That's no problem. I think that's great. And thank you, Erica, for all you have done to help facilitate folks being there in person as well as virtual. It's very much appreciated.
No worries.
Can I ask so one of the agenda items was to review and approve the section 3 policy. Do we wanna-
it sounds like you, well, that was Molly, it sounds like you all did it.
That was what we did.
Oh, okay, that was that, because I didn't see what was sent, she didn't pull up what was sent out, so I just didn't recognize it.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was kind of surprised that by the time I got here, you had done all of her stuff, and I go, oh, okay, then I had more time.
Yeah, we did talk about that, yeah.
Any other announcements or other business? I just want to acknowledge, I think Eliberto, you sent out an email letting us all know that the former board member Karen passed away last month, just a few weeks after she resigned due to health issues. So I'm really sorry to hear that. And so thank you for coordinating or communicating with her family. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Anyone? Deanna, and then we need a second. All right, Kim, we are adjourned. See you all next month. Thank you for all of your contributions and appreciate you.
Thank you.
So. It's some good notes on it.